Hey there, and welcome to DIY Projects with Pete. This is episode 2 of the renovation series, and in today's video we'll be renovating the garage. So we'll basically be taking an uninsulated garage that needs a lot of TLC and turning it into a nice finished workspace. Now the project took about a week to a week and a half, and it was a lot of fun. I learned a lot along the way, and I hope some of the steps that we go through in today's video will help you with your project if you have one in the works. Now, if you enjoy it and find it helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to check out some of the other videos in the renovation series. Let's get started. The first step was to clean out the garage to give us some space to work. Now, this garage will ultimately be used to park vehicles, but it will serve as my shop until a separate building goes up. Danny stopped over to help with the project, and we started by demoing a few things. We got rid of the shelf, and then we removed quite a few nails, screws, and then some hooks that weren't being used anymore. I took a Sawzall to the old bench, and then a sledgehammer to demo it, then came down the old pegboard. The drywall had some mold and water damage, so we removed the lower piece, removed the old insulation, and then replaced it with new electrical, insulation, and drywall. I used spray foam to seal off any gaps in the garage, and then a utility knife to clean up excess once it had dried. A cutoff blade was used to remove a few metal ties from the original foundation pour. Then we started forming the new walls. Now, the floor slants toward the center of the garage, and so things weren't perfectly square, and so we stick framed the walls. The bottom pressure-treated boards were secured by pre-drilling into the concrete and attaching with Tapcon screws. We spaced the boards 24 inches on center and worked our way around the two sides of the garage where the concrete was exposed. Then the outlets were wired, so there's going to be plenty of power and outlets available. Then it was time to add the insulation. The insulation came in sheets that fit the space perfectly without having to cut it. I used R13 fiberglass bats, which are meant for 2x4 walls, and they were pre-cut to 23 inches wide and 93 inches tall. Now, the insulation went up quickly and was really easy to install, and I worked around the entire wall and made cuts with a long utility knife around outlets and to make the insulation fit in the smaller spaces around windows. Once the insulation was complete, we started sheeting the walls. We used 5/8 inch thick drywall for this project, and a multi-tool worked really well to cut holes for the outlets, which I put a little higher off the ground so benches or work tables can fit underneath them. The rest of the drywall is cut using a utility knife and a drywall T-square. The sheets are attached at each stud location using 1 5/8 inch long drywall screws, and then we began taping and mudding the joints. Now, I just used the basic joint tape you can find at any store. It's the kind with the crease in the center. And this tape also works great along with a drywall cornering tool to create perfect corners. You'll feather out around the joints, and we'll usually need to do at least a couple coats. While waiting for the mud to dry, we began sanding the big support beam to get the stains out and to restore it to look nice again. Danny was helping me out with this project, and he started with a 60 grit sanding pad and finished up with a 120 grit sanding pad. Once I was happy with the joints, we began applying a pool trowel texture to the ceiling. Now, I don't have a drywall sprayer, but it did help to speed up the process by rolling on some of the texture, and then I simply needed to trowel over it. We did wet down the mixture a little bit with some water. The next step was to texture all the walls. We rolled this on as well, and I loaded up a hawk with some mud so I had a little bit more if I needed. Next, we sanded and then painted the garage. We sealed the drywall and then used 2 coats of a paint called Alabaster, which I've used in other parts of the house. It's a real nice color that's going to help make the shop feel really bright. When the painting was complete, I removed the plastic, which was protecting the beam, and then I applied an oil-based polyurethane to help bring out the rich colors of the wood and to protect it. I did about 3 coats of the polyurethane to give it a nice shine. The next step was to measure the window so I could frame it out with a few pine boards. I ripped a 1x12 board to fit the space, some 1x4 trim, and then test fit everything. Then I got out the pressure washer to clean up the floor. Now, I probably should have protected the floor while I was mudding, but I didn't, so I had to take a few extra minutes to get it all off. The concrete needed a good cleaning anyway, so it wasn't a big deal. The original door was all dented up, so I removed it. I took out the old door frame and then put the new one back in place. Now, doors have always been a little bit of a pain to hang in my opinion, but I came across quick door hangers a while back, which now makes the process super easy. I wanted to find a stain to match the beam as best as possible, and it turned out that a stain called Gunstock was the perfect fit. I put 2 coats on each of the trim boards and on the window trim, and unfortunately I didn't get any footage of putting up the trim, but it is a pretty straightforward process. I found a good deal for LED shop lights on Amazon, and so I ordered 6 units to help provide even light throughout the garage. I used cable clips to keep the cord tight against the ceiling. Lastly, I finished up with a few final touches and called it good. I'll be adding some storage and an epoxy garage floor in the future, but for now, I'm just happy to have a garage to work out of. I hope this video inspires you to get started on a renovation or to take action on building your next project. If you found the video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and cheers from Montana. Nala, come here. Good girl.